Let's get more on these protests. We're joined by Elena Casas, who is in Paris. Elena, it wasn't too long ago that Macron was elected with a lot of excitement and hope for the future. It was a landslide win. But here we are now, the people of Paris back on the streets. It's a common scene. What are they unhappy about now?
Well, I think it's fair to say that people protesting now were never very keen on Macron and his reform programme in the first place. The unions believe that he's engaged in a sort of Thatcherite programme of cost-cutting, austerity and privatisation. The rail unions are concerned that his controversial railway reform, which of course has sparked these strikes to begin with, which will end the job security that train drivers have now, which gives them a job for life and allows many to retire as young as 55, is the first step towards privatisation, something that the government denies. And they were joined in the protests today by people from across the public sector. Lots of people from hospitals, from the health sector were visible protesting, and also retired people. And they're largely concerned about the health and social care sectors being hit by Macron's plan to cut 120,000 public sector jobs, something that was in his electoral programme, but which has been very controversial from the get-go. They've also been joined by large numbers of students today, some of whom have blockaded their universities. A number of universities across France are completely blockaded, meaning that exams that were supposed to take place this week will not be happening. And that's because they're angry about the reform to university entrance. So at the moment, university entrance in France is not academically selective at all. The government wants to introduce a degree of selection, which some students clearly believe is against their right to education for all. And so the government's nightmare really is all of these disparate groups of people who have different bones to pick with the Macron government coming together and taking to the streets. And that is what we saw today, although in small numbers. We are seeing people who have disparate arguments with the government joining together to protest.
Well, these kind of protests have always been a bugbear for previous governments. How is this government reacting?
Well, historically, previous governments have always backed down in France, especially where there's a railway strike concerned. Train drivers, of course, have such capacity to cause chaos by preventing anyone from travelling around the country that whenever they do strike, generally the French government backs down. Now, Macron is extremely determined to show that he is not like his predecessors and that he's got more guts and that he is going to stick up to the unions. The problem for him is that public opinion is fairly finely balanced. Most recent polls show a very narrow majority in favour of his railway reform. But the problem is that as people get more annoyed with the travel strike as time goes on, they might blame the government rather than the unions.